Father sold his pregnant fat daughter to an Amish man as punishment, but what he did to her will leave you speechless. In a frozen frontier town, a cruel father drags his daughter into the street, her shame on display for all to see. The church bell tolls, hooves thunder on the hard ground, and whispers cut deeper than the winter wind. She expects misery, maybe even death, until the quiet stranger steps forward, pays the price, and leads her away. But this isn't salvation without a cost. Land barons circle like wolves. Neighbors sharpen their tongues, and a hidden fire of vengeance waits in the night. In a world where cruelty rules and faith is tested, mercy becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. What secret strength will this woman find when everyone expects her to fall? And when the flames rise against them, will love and faith be enough to save her, her child, and the man who dared to show her kindness? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and if this story speaks to you. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The winter wind howled through the town square of Millbrook, Colorado, carrying stinging flakes of snow that bit at exposed skin. Angel huddled against herself, her thin shawl offering little protection against the bitter cold that seemed to mirror the ice in her father's heart. Her shoulders trembled, partly from the freezing temperature and partly from the shame that burned in her chest despite the chill. The townsfolk gathered in a rough circle, their breath creating clouds in the frozen air. Some wore expressions of mock pity, others barely concealed their cruel amusement. Angel could hear their whispers, sharp as the winter wind itself, cutting through her like knives. Serves her right, one woman muttered behind a gloved hand, bringing shame to her family. Another agreed with a knowing nod. Her father stood beside her, his face flushed red with anger and humiliation. The veins in his neck stood out as he gripped her arm roughly, forcing her to stand straight despite her desire to shrink away from the crowd's scrutiny. His voice boomed across the square, heavy with bitterness and disgust. "Here stands my daughter," he announced, his words clipped and harsh. "A disgrace to my name and this good town." He gestured to Angel's swollen belly, barely hidden beneath her worn dress. "Since she's proved herself nothing but trouble, I'm washing my hands of her. Who'll take her off my hands? Name your price." Angel's eyes burned with unshed tears that threatened to freeze on her cheeks. Her father was selling her like a piece of livestock at auction. And the crowd's reactions made it clear they saw nothing wrong with this display. Some men in the crowd began to call out numbers, their voices mixing with cruel laughter. $2. I'll give you $3, and that's being generous. The mockery in their voices made Angel's stomach turn. She closed her eyes, trying to shut out the nightmare surrounding her, when suddenly a hush fell over the crowd. Through the silence came the steady crunch of boots on snow. Opening her eyes, Angel saw a broad-shouldered figure moving through the parting crowd. William Hochstetler's plain black wool coat and hat marked him clearly as Amish, setting him apart from the townspeople in more ways than one. His steady gaze met Angel's, and in those eyes she saw something she'd nearly forgotten existed: kindness. Without a word to the crowd, William reached into his coat and pulled out a leather pouch. "I'll pay $20, he said, his voice quiet but carrying clearly across the now silent square. Not for ownership, but for her freedom. Her father's grip on her arm tightened. $20. He scoffed, but the greed in his eyes was evident. William counted out the money carefully, each coin landing in her father's palm with a final sort of weight. Then, with gentle hands that contrasted sharply with her father's rough treatment, William removed his own coat and wrapped it around Angel's shoulders. The wool was warm from his body, and it smelled of fresh hay and honest work. "She will live under my protection," William announced, his voice carrying authority despite its softness. Not as property, but as a child of God, deserving of dignity and respect. Gasps rose from the crowd. Angel's father opened his mouth as if to protest, but the money in his hand seemed to silence whatever he might have said. William guided Angel toward his waiting wagon, his hand steady at her elbow as he helped her climb up to the seat. The wooden bench creaked as William settled beside her, taking up the reins. The two draft horses stood patient in their harness, their breath creating white plumes in the cold air. As William clicked his tongue and the wagon began to move, Angel heard the murmuring of the crowd fade behind them. The iron-bound wheels crunched through the snow, the familiar sound of the horses' hooves marking time as they left the town behind. Angel sat stiffly, still wrapped in William's coat, hardly daring to believe what had just happened. The coat was warm, but she couldn't stop trembling. The night was growing deeper around them, and in the distance, a coyote called out to the rising moon. The wagon creaked and swayed beneath them as they made their way through the darkness, each step of the horses taking them further from the nightmare of the town square. The rhythmic sound of the horses' hooves echoed in the frosty night air, a steady heartbeat that seemed to promise something Angel had thought forever lost to her hope. The wagon moved steadily through the darkness, its wheels crunching over the frozen ground. Angel sat rigid on the wooden bench, William's coat pulled tight around her swollen belly. The only sounds were the gentle jingle of the harness, the creak of wooden axles, and the steady clip-clop of hooves breaking through patches of ice in the dim light. Angel stole careful glances at her rescuer. William's beard was neatly trimmed in the Amish way, his clothes plain but well kept. The lantern swinging in the wagon bed cast dancing shadows across his face, highlighting the quiet determination in his features. His hands, steady on the reins, bore the calluses of honest work. The silence stretched between them until Angel could bear it no longer. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wagon's sounds. "Why did you do it?" William's hands adjusted on the leather reins as he considered her question. When he spoke, his voice was measured and calm. What happened in that town square wasn't right. Cruelty shown in public should never define a life. He paused, guiding the horses around a frozen rut in the trail. God asks mercy of men. It's that simple. Angel watched his profile in the swaying lantern light, searching for any hint of deception, but found only sincerity in his steady gaze and quiet words. The trail wound through stands of snow-laden pine trees before opening onto a clearing. William's homestead appeared ahead, a solid cabin built of squared logs, its windows glowing with warm lamplight. A barn stood nearby, its weathered boards rising dark against the star-filled sky. A sturdy corral completed the picture of the modest but well-maintained farm as they drew closer. Angel felt her heart flutter with competing emotions. Relief at being away from her father's crushing disapproval ward with fresh fear of the unknown. What would this quiet man expect of her? What price would she truly pay for his protection? The horses came to a stop in the yard, their breath creating clouds in the cold night air. William set the brake and climbed down, his boots crunching in the packed snow. He moved to Angel's side of the wagon, reaching up with strong, careful hands. "Let me help you down," he said softly. "The step is high." Angel hesitated only a moment before allowing him to assist her. His grip was firm but gentle as he lifted her from the wagon seat, taking care to account for her awkward balance. If he noticed the weight of her pregnancy, his face showed no judgment, only concern for her comfort. "Watch your step here," he cautioned, guiding her past an icy patch. The warm light spilling from the cabin windows drew them forward like a beacon in the darkness. William opened the heavy wooden door, gesturing for Angel to enter first. The cabin's interior was simple but welcoming. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, pushing back the winter chill. Clean-swept plank floors stretched beneath sturdy furniture, all of it plain but well-crafted. A pot of stew simmered on the cookstove, filling the air with savory aromas that made Angel's empty stomach clench. "Please," William said, pulling out a chair at the solid wooden table. "Sit and warm yourself." Angel sank onto the chair, still wrapped in his coat. She watched as William moved about the cabin with quiet efficiency, ladling stew into a bowl and cutting thick slices from a loaf of brown bread. He placed both before her, along with a spoon and a cup of steaming tea. "Eat," he encouraged, taking a seat across from her. "You must be hungry. You must be hungry." Angel's hands trembled as she picked up the spoon. The stew was rich with vegetables and tender meat, the bread still fresh enough to release warmth when she tore it. As she took her first careful bites, tears pricked at her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had shown her such simple kindness. The food was good, hearty and filling, but it was more than that. This quiet man had not only rescued her from public shame, but he was now feeding her, sheltering her, treating her with dignity. It had been months since anyone had done more than scorn her. Still, a lifetime of hard lessons made trust difficult. Angel ate slowly, watching William from beneath lowered lashes, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But he simply sat there, his presence steady and unthreatening, occasionally rising to add wood to the fire or refill her teacup. Angel woke to the rhythmic sound of an axe splitting wood. Sunlight streamed through frost-covered windows, casting diamond patterns on the cabin's plank floor. The quilt William had given her was thick and warm, keeping the morning chill at bay where she lay near the hearth's dying embers. She sat up slowly, her back stiff from pregnancy, and looked around the single room in the clear light of day. The cabin was modest but well-ordered. A sturdy bed stood in one corner, its quilts pulled tight and smooth. Wooden shelves lined one wall, holding neat rows of preserved foods in glass jars, peaches, beans, and what looked like pickled vegetables. Their labels were written in a careful hand near the window. A Bible lay open on a small table, its pages marked with a leather cord. Angel approached it cautiously, noting the well-worn corners of its cover. Beside it sat a pair of reading glasses, carefully folded. The steady chopping outside paused. Snow crunched under boots, and the door opened, letting in a blast of cold air. William stepped inside, snow dusting his broad shoulders and plain black hat. His cheeks were red from exertion and cold. "Good morning," he said quietly, stamping his boots clean. "I trust you slept well." Angel nodded, suddenly conscious of her rumpled dress and loose hair. "Yes, thank you." William moved to the cook stove, adding wood from his morning's work. "I'll have breakfast ready shortly. There's wash water in the basin if you'd like to freshen up." As he worked at the stove, cooking up a pot of thick oatmeal and brewing coffee, William spoke in his measured way. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," he said, stirring the pot. "Though I should warn you, neighbors will talk. They always do." Angel's cheeks burned with shame. I have nowhere else," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. William simply nodded, as if this was answer enough. He served up 2 bowls of steaming oatmeal, adding a dollop of preserved peaches to each. They ate in comfortable silence. The only sounds, the clink of spoons and the pop of the cook stove's fire. After breakfast, Angel watched through the window as William went about his morning chores. He moved with quiet efficiency between the barn and various outbuildings. 2 draft horses stood in the corral, their heavy coats frosted with snow. A milk cow lowed softly from the barn, and chickens scratched in the scattered hay near their coop. When William came back inside to warm his hands, he caught her watching. "Would you like to learn about the animals?" he asked. Angel nodded, grateful for any distraction from her thoughts. William helped her into his spare coat again, and they stepped out into the crisp morning air. "These are Daniel and Ruth," he said, introducing the massive draft horses. They nickered softly as William offered them each a handful of oats. "They're Belgians, good-natured and strong." The horses' breath came out in great white clouds as they lipped up the grain in the barn. He showed her the milk cow, a gentle Jersey named Martha. "She gives more cream than I can use," he explained, patting her dappled flank. The chicken coop was their last stop. The hens still lay, even in winter, William said, showing Angel how to reach carefully under the settling hens to collect warm eggs. Though not as many as in summer, Angel cradled the eggs in her hands, marveling at their warmth despite the cold air. Such a simple thing, gathering eggs, yet it felt like the first useful task she'd done in months. They spent the rest of the day in peaceful industry, William splitting more wood and tending to various repairs, Angel learning the rhythm of his household. As dusk approached, they shared a simple supper of bread and stew, much like the night before. The familiar meal brought an unexpected comfort. After the dishes were cleaned and put away, William took his Bible from the table. He knelt beside his chair, his expression peaceful in the lamplight. "Lord," he prayed softly, "grant us your mercy and guidance. Watch over this household and all who dwell within it. Amen." Angel lay awake later, wrapped in her quilt by the hearth. Her father's cruel words echoed in her memory: disgrace, shame, burden. But they seemed to fade slightly against the quiet strength of William's prayer, his simple request for mercy covering them both. Still, doubt and shame gnawed at her heart as she watched shadows dance on the cabin's ceiling. Wondering how long this peace could last, the sound of William's steady breathing from his bed in the corner eventually joined the gentle tick of the cooling stove and the whisper of wind around the cabin's eaves. In this moment, despite her uncertain future, Angel felt the first tentative stirrings of belonging. 2 days of quiet routine had settled over William's homestead when he announced the need to fetch supplies. The morning sun glinted off fresh snow as he hitched Daniel and Ruth to the wagon, their harness jingling in the crisp air. "I must go to town for flour and seed," William said, adjusting the horse's traces. "You'll be safe here until I return." Angel wrapped her shawl tighter, watching him work. The thought of being alone made her chest tighten. "I'd like to come with you," she said quickly, then added, If that's acceptable." William paused, studying her face. "The townfolk won't be kind, I know," Angel said softly. "But I can't hide forever." William nodded, understanding in his eyes. He helped her up onto the wagon seat, careful of her condition, then climbed up beside her. The horses started forward at his gentle command, their hooves crunching through the snow. As they approached town, Angel felt her courage faltering. The streets were busy with morning traffic, cowboys leading pack horses, women carrying market baskets, children running errands. The wagon's wheels clattered on the hard-packed snow. The whispers started immediately. Angel saw heads turn, heard the murmurs ripple through the crowd like wind through wheat. A group of women outside the millinery drew together, their faces pinched with judgment as they stared at her swollen belly. "Bought himself a harlot," one merchant said loudly enough to carry, causing several others to snicker. Angel's cheeks burned, but William kept his eyes forward, guiding the horses steadily down the street at the general store. William helped Angel down from the wagon. The bell above the door announced their entrance, and several customers turned to stare. The storekeeper's friendly greeting died on his lips when he recognized Angel. While William discussed his order for flour and seed, the door opened again. A tall, lean man in expensive boots strode in, his spurs ringing on the wooden floor. Angel recognized him as McGraw, one of the powerful cattle barons who controlled much of the territory. McGraw's lip queues as he looked at William's plain clothes and beard. "Well, if it ain't the Amish farmer," he drawled, his voice carrying through the store. "Heard you've been making interesting purchases lately?" His eyes slid to Angel, who instinctively stepped closer to William. William continued calmly measuring out seed into a sack. "Good morning, Mr. McGrath. Your kind don't belong here." McGrath continued, his tone hardening. "That river bottom land of yours is cattle country. Always has been." He stepped closer, towering over William. Won't stay yours for long, mark my words. Angel felt her hands trembling, but William's voice remained steady. I believe there's room enough for all who wish to work honestly, he said, placing the money for his purchases on the counter. Mick Ross' face darkened at the subtle rebuke. Before he could respond, William gathered their supplies and guided Angel toward the door. Good day to you, he said politely, leaving McGraw glaring after them. The ride home was quiet until they passed the town limits. Then Angel broke down, tears streaming down her face. I've only made things worse for you, she sobbed. They already hated you for being different. Now with me here, William pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to face her. The ridicule isn't because of you, he said gently. These men are driven by greed. They want my land because it's fertile and has water rights. They would find reason to hate me whether you were here or not. Angel wiped her eyes with her sleeve. But the things they said, words only have the power we give them, William said, clicking to the horses to move forward again. God judges our hearts, not the opinions of men. Not the opinions of men. That evening, Angel insisted on helping prepare supper, despite William's protests that she should rest. She worked alongside him in the cabin's warm kitchen, peeling potatoes and kneading dough for bread. The simple tasks brought an unexpected sense of accomplishment as they sat down to eat. Angel felt a small measure of pride in the meal they'd made together. The bread was a little lopsided, but William broke it carefully and offered her the first piece. Thank you, he said simply. You're helping make this home a bit warmer today. Angel ducked her head, touched by his words. Outside, snow began falling again, dusting the window panes with white. Inside the cabin, the lamp cast a gentle glow over their shared meal. A small island of peace in a world that seemed determined to judge them both. The snow fell in thick. Steady curtains outside William's cabin, blanketing the world in pristine white. Inside, Angel found herself settling into an unexpected rhythm of daily life. Her swollen belly made some tasks difficult. But she was determined to contribute what she could to the household that had given her shelter each morning. She watched William rise before dawn for prayers. His quiet devotion, a constant reminder of the faith that guided his actions. After breakfast, they would tackle the day's work together. William never demanded her help, but Angel insisted on doing what she could. The chicken coop became her first regular task. Despite the cold, she found comfort in the quiet clucking of the hens as she scattered feed and gathered eggs. The birds seemed to accept her presence without judgment. Unlike the townspeople who had scorned her, you have a gentle way with them, William observed one morning, carrying fresh straw for the nesting boxes. The hens lay better when they're treated kindly. Angel smiled, cradling the warm eggs in her apron. They're easy to be gentle with. They don't look at me like everyone else does. In the cabin's warm kitchen, Angel learned to knead bread dough the way William showed her. Her first attempts were lumpy and misshapen, but he ate them without complaint. Sometimes she caught him watching her work, a distant look in his eyes, as if remembering someone else's hands at the same task between chores. She mended clothes, grateful for the simple rhythm of needle and thread. Her stitches grew more even with practice, and William's quiet words of thanks made her chest warm with pride. One afternoon, as heavy snow continued to fall, Angel ventured out to fetch more firewood from the stack by the door. The cabin steps had grown treacherous with ice beneath the fresh powder. Her foot slipped suddenly, and she felt herself falling backward. Strong hands caught her before she could fall. William had appeared behind her, his grip steady but gentle as he helped her regain her balance. The warmth of his hands lingered even after he let go. "Careful," he said softly. "The wood can wait. Your safety matters more." That evening, William prepared a thick beef stew, the savory aroma filling the cabin as darkness settled outside. Angel sat at the table, watching him stir the pot over the fire. Questions that had been building for days finally found their way to her lips. "William," she began hesitantly, Would you tell me about your wife?" His hand stilled on the spoon for a moment. Then he turned, his face softened by firelight and memory. "Her name was Rebecca," he said quietly. Settling into the chair across from Angel, she loved winter evenings like this, when the snow kept the world outside and the fire kept us warm within. Angel listened as William spoke of his late wife with gentle reverence. How they had married young in Pennsylvania. How they had dreamed of starting fresh in the West. His voice grew heavy as he described the difficult winter 2 years past. When Rebecca had gone into labor early, the midwife tried everything she could, William said, his eyes distant. But sometimes God's plans are different from our own. Rebecca slipped away and the baby with her. He folded his large hands on the table. For a long time, I questioned why. But faith isn't about understanding everything. It's about trusting, even when the path is dark. Angel felt tears welling in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It must be hard, having me here in my condition." William shook his head. God often sends us down unexpected paths to heal our hearts. Rebecca would have wanted her home to be a sanctuary for those in need. They ate their stew in companionable silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the wind's soft moaning outside. Angel's heart felt fuller than it had in months, weighted with William's trust in sharing his grief. As they cleared the dishes, Angel found herself speaking. "Thank you," she said softly, "for showing me kindness when my own father cast me out. For treating me like a person, not ashamed to be hidden away." William paused in his work, meeting her eyes. "Shame belongs to those who choose cruelty over mercy," he said firmly, "not to those who need shelter from life's storms." That night, as William knelt for his evening prayers, Angel lay on her pallet by the hearth, listening to his quiet murmurs. For the first time since her father had driven her from home, she felt moved to pray herself. Her whispered words were hesitant, rusty with disuse, but they came from a heart beginning to remember what trust felt like. "Thank you, Lord," she breathed, "for leading me to this place, to this good man's kindness." Outside, the snow continued to fall, wrapping the cabin in a peaceful hush, while inside, 2 wounded hearts began to heal in the warmth of unexpected grace. The morning dawned cold and clear as William hitched the horses to the wagon. A notice had arrived the previous day, summoning him to the town hall for a hearing about his water rights. Angel watched him adjust the harnesses with steady hands, though she could sense the tension in his shoulders. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. Wrapping her shawl tighter around herself, William paused, studying her face. "The town hasn't been kind to you. Are you certain? You stood up for me when no one else would." Angel replied, "I won't let you face them alone." The wagon wheels creaked as they made their way into town. Fresh snow crunched beneath the horses' hooves, and Angel's breath formed small clouds in the crisp air. William sat straight-backed beside her, his plain black hat and beard marking him as different from the other settlers they passed. The town hall stood tall and imposing, its windows gleaming in the winter sun. Already, horses and wagons crowded the street outside as townsfolk gathered for the hearing. Angel felt their stares as William helped her down from the wagon. Her pregnancy now impossible to hide. Inside, wooden benches creaked with the weight of curious onlookers. The whispers started immediately, harsh little sounds that reminded Angel of rattlesnakes. She held her head high, though her hands trembled beneath her shawl. William guided her to a seat near the front, his quiet strength helping her endure the judgment around them. McGraw sat at a table with several other cattle barons, his lean face twisted in a permanent sneer. The town judge, a weather-beaten man named Harrison, called the hearing to order with 3 sharp raps of his gavel. McGraw rose slowly, adjusting his vest with deliberate care. "Your Honor," he drawled, "we're here today because certain elements in our community threaten the proper development of our territory." His cold eyes fixed on William. "The Hochstetler property controls critical access to River Creek, water that rightfully belongs to established ranching operations." Angel watched William's face remain calm as McGraw continued his attack. Furthermore, McGraw's voice grew harder. "I submit that William Hochstetler, by virtue of his peculiar religious beliefs, is unfit to hold property under Colorado law. These Amish refuse to bear arms, refuse to swear oaths, refuse to properly participate in civil society. How can such a man be trusted with vital water rights?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Angel saw several heads nodding in agreement. Her heart pounded as she looked at William, still sitting quietly, his hands folded in his lap. Before she knew what she was doing, Angel pushed herself to her feet. Her movement drew every eye in the room, and she felt the weight of their stares on her swollen belly. "Your Honor," her voice shook at first but grew stronger with each word. "I ask permission to speak." Judge Harrison raised his eyebrows but nodded. "Proceed, miss." Angel gripped the back of the bench in front of her. "I know something about the character of men in this town. My own father dragged me into the square and tried to sell me like cattle when he learned I was with child." Gasps and mutters filled the room, but she pressed on. "William Hochstetler was the only one who showed mercy that day. He didn't buy me as property. He rescued me from cruelty. He rescued me from cruelty." She turned to face the crowd, her voice rising with emotion. "I've lived under his roof these past weeks. I've seen how he treats his land, his animals, his neighbors. He works harder than any man I know. He helps travelers in need. He prays for those who spite him." Her eyes found McGraw's. "I've seen true honor in William's quiet ways, and true shame in the actions of men who claim to be respectable." The room fell silent. Angel's heart thundered in her chest as she slowly sat back down. William's hand found hers and squeezed it gently. McGraw's face had turned red with anger. He started to rise again, but Judge Harrison held up his hand. "I've heard enough for today," the judge declared. "This matter requires careful consideration. Court is adjourned until further notice." The crowd buzzed with conversation as people filed out. Angel felt both proud and afraid, proud for speaking truth, afraid of the consequences. William helped her back into the wagon, and they began the journey home through the lengthening afternoon shadows. "Thank you," William said softly as they drove. "Your words were brave and true." Angel clutched her shawl tighter. "They'll hate me even more now," she whispered. "Hate us both, perhaps," William agreed. "But you spoke with courage and honor. That matters more than their judgment." They rode on in companionable silence, the wagon swaying beneath them, while behind them, in town, whispers and opinions swirled like snow in the winter wind. The wind howled outside the cabin windows, carrying thick flurries of snow that obscured the afternoon light. Angel sat in William's wooden rocking chair, her face tight with pain as another contraction gripped her. The baby was coming, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. William moved quickly through the cabin, his usual calm manner touched with worry as he gathered boards to cover the windows. The bitter wind found every crack and crevice, making the lantern flames dance wildly. Angel watched him work, grateful for his steady presence even as fear gnawed at her heart. "The pains are getting stronger," she gasped, clutching the arms of the chair. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the chill. William secured the last board, then knelt beside her. "You need help beyond what I can give," he said softly. His eyes showed both concern and determination. "I know someone, a Ute midwife, named Naomi. She's helped many women through difficult births." Angel nodded, too focused on breathing through another wave of pain to speak. William squeezed her hand gently, then rose to his feet. I'll ride out to find her. Keep close to the fire. I won't be gone longer than needed. She watched through worried eyes as he donned his heaviest coat and wrapped a scarf around his face. The door opened, letting in a blast of snow and bitter cold before closing behind him. Angel heard the muffled sounds of him mounting his horse, then nothing but the howling wind. The hours crept by slowly. Angel paced when she could, prayed when she couldn't move, and tried to keep the fire fed with the wood William had stacked nearby. The contractions grew stronger and closer together, making her cry out into the empty cabin. Just when she thought she couldn't bear it any longer, she heard horses outside. The door burst open, bringing with it swirls of snow and two snow-covered figures. William stamped his boots while helping his companion unwrap her layers of wool and fur. Naomi emerged from her wrappings, her dark eyes sharp and kind in her weathered face. She moved to Angel's side with quiet authority, speaking in accented but clear English. I am here to help, young mother. Let us prepare for your little one's arrival. William bustled around the cabin, following Naomi's calm instructions, heating water, gathering clean linens, moving the bed closer to the fire. Through the window boards, Angel could hear neighbors who had spotted Naomi's arrival. Their muttered complaints about allowing an Indian woman into the settlement carried on the wind. But William paid them no mind. The labor intensified as night fell. Angel gripped William's hand through each contraction, drawing strength from his solid presence. Naomi moved with practiced efficiency, her hands gentle but sure as she checked on Angel's progress. She hummed softly ancient birthing songs of her people, and the melody seemed to help. Angel focused through the pain. You are strong, Naomi assured her, wiping Angel's brow with a cool cloth. The baby comes well. Listen to your body's wisdom. Hours passed in a blur of pain and effort. The storm raged outside, while inside, William and Naomi worked together seamlessly, he supporting Angel's back when she needed to walk, Naomi monitoring mother and child with experienced care. As dawn approached, the pain peaked. Now Naomi commanded. Push with all your strength. Angel bore down, crying out as William held her hands. With a final tremendous effort, her baby slipped into the world. The thin wail of new life filled the cabin, drowning out even the storm's fury. A son, Naomi announced, quickly wrapping the infant in warm cloths, strong and healthy. William's eyes filled with tears as Naomi placed the swaddled baby in Angel's arms. He knelt beside the bed, one hand gently touching the baby's dark hair. His voice shook as he prayed, Thank you, Lord, for this precious gift. Watch over this child and guide his path. Angel couldn't take her eyes off her son's tiny face. After months of shame and fear, after her father's cruelty and the town's judgment, here was pure joy. The baby's fingers curled around her thumb, and hope bloomed in her heart like a winter flower breaking through snow. Naomi smiled at the new family as she cleaned up efficiently. Before leaving, she stood at the bedside and spoke soft words in her native tongue, making graceful gestures over the baby. A blessing, she explained, asking the Creator to grant him wisdom and strength. She wrapped herself in her layers once more and slipped out as quietly as she had come, leaving only footprints in the fresh snow. The storm began to ease as morning light filtered through the cracks in the window boards. William built up the fire and pulled his chair close to the bed. Angel cradled their sleeping son, marveling at his perfect features. The cabin felt full of peace, the crackling fire, the baby's soft breaths, and William's quiet presence creating a circle of warmth against the winter cold. The morning sun glinted off fresh snow as William's wagon approached the small white church at the edge of town. Angel held her 2-week-old son close, wrapped in layers of soft blankets against the winter chill. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the mix of welcome and judgment that awaited them. William guided the horses to a stop, his breath visible in the crisp air. Ready? He asked softly, helping Angel down from the wagon. She nodded, though her heart fluttered with anxiety. The wooden church stood stark against the blue sky, its single bell tower reaching toward heaven. Horses and wagons lined the packed snow outside, showing that most of the town had turned out for the Sunday service. Angel's steps faltered as they approached the church steps, but William's steady hand at her elbow gave her courage. Inside, the single room was warm from the pot-bellied stove and filled with the rustle of Sunday clothes and quiet whispers. Sunlight streamed through frosted windows, catching dust motes in golden beams. Angel felt eyes turn toward them as William led her to a pew near the front. Pastor Josiah stood at the simple pulpit, his weathered face kind as he nodded to them. The congregation settled as he began the service, his voice carrying clearly through the wooden space. Angel found herself relaxing slightly as familiar hymns filled the air. William's deep voice joined the singing, and even Angel hummed softly to her son. When the time came for the dedication, Pastor Josiah called them forward. Angel's legs trembled as she walked down the narrow aisle, but William's presence beside her kept her steady. They stood before the congregation, their son stirring slightly in his blankets. "We gather today," Pastor Josiah began, his voice warm and firm, "to dedicate this child to God's care and guidance." He placed a gentle hand on the baby's head. In His infinite mercy, the Lord brings new life to remind us of His grace. Angel heard a few murmurs from the congregation, but they were drowned out by the pastor's prayer. "Heavenly Father, watch over this little one. Grant him strength for the path ahead, wisdom to know your will, and courage to walk in your ways." For a precious moment, as the amen echoed through the church, Angel felt wrapped in the community's acceptance. The hymn that followed lifted her spirit, voices blending in harmony around them. She caught glimpses of genuine smiles from some of the women, saw a few heads nodding in approval at the healthy baby, but the moment shattered as they moved toward the church steps after the service. McGraw stood with several other ranchers, their faces hard with disapproval. "Quite a show, Hochstetler," McGraw drawled, loud enough for nearby folks to hear, "taking in strays and raising bastards now." William's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "Every child deserves God's blessing. Shame ain't blessed," another rancher spat. "You're harboring sin, plain as day, plain as day." Angel clutched her son tighter, feeling him stir against her chest. She turned to hurry down the steps, but froze at the sight of a familiar figure pushing through the crowd. Her father's face was twisted with the same bitter anger she remembered from the town square. "Told you she'd bring nothing but trouble," he sneered, addressing the onlookers rather than William or Angel directly. "She ruin any man fool enough to shelter her. Mark my words." William stepped forward, physically placing himself between Angel and the hostile group. "The only shame here," he said quietly but firmly, "is in how some men choose to treat God's children." The tension crackled like ice breaking on a river. Angel saw hands moving toward gun belts, saw the ugly intent in McGraw's eyes. But William simply turned, wrapping one arm protectively around her shoulders, and guided her through the crowd toward their wagon. The mutters followed them, ugly words about sin and judgment, threats barely veiled in righteous tones. Angel's father's voice cut through the others. "You'll regret this, Hochstetler. Mark my words." William helped Angel into the wagon with careful hands, ensuring she and the baby were settled before climbing up himself. As they pulled away from the church, Angel heard the murmurs growing darker, saw the men clustering around McGraw and her father, heads bent in conversation that boded ill. The baby began to fuss, perhaps sensing his mother's distress. Angel rocked him gently, trying to find again that brief feeling of acceptance she'd felt during the hymns. But it had vanished like snow in warm sun. Leaving only the cold reality of their situation, William drove steadily, his expression thoughtful as the church disappeared behind them. The winter sun cast long shadows across the snow-covered fields, and Angel found herself watching them rather than looking back at the town and its judgment. The winter night wrapped William's homestead in stillness, broken only by the soft sounds of Angel humming to her son as she rocked him near the cabin's hearth. William had just finished his evening prayers when the first whiff of smoke drifted through the door's edges. A horse's frightened whinny pierced the quiet. William leaped to his feet, throwing open the cabin door. Orange flames licked the night sky, consuming the barn's weather-worn boards. Dark figures darted through the shadows, their forms barely visible against the snow. The horses, William shouted, already running toward the inferno. The heat blast hit him as he reached the barn door, making him stumble back. Angel clutched her baby close, her heart pounding as she rushed to the cabin's porch. "Help!" she screamed into the darkness, her voice carrying across the snow-covered fields. "Fire! Someone help us!" Inside the barn, William fought through thick smoke, reaching the horse stalls. The animals thrashed in panic, eyes rolling white with fear. He worked quickly, fingers fumbling with the latches, guiding them toward the door. The flames roared overhead, sending burning splinters raining down. The milk cow bolted past him, followed by both draft horses. William staggered after them, coughing violently. The fire had spread to the hayloft, where winter feed worth months of work stored. Tools, tack, and seed for spring planting, all of it would be lost. As William emerged from the barn, gasping for clean air, shadows solidified into men. Mikraw's voice cut through the crackling flames. "Told you to mind your place, Amish." The first blow caught William in the ribs, driving him to his knees in the snow. More fists followed, accompanied by boots. He curled inward, protecting his head as Mikraw's men rained down violence. "Stop." Angel's scream split the night. "You're killing him." Through swollen eyes, William saw distant lanterns bobbing, neighbors finally responding to Angel's calls. McGraw and his men melted away into the darkness. Leaving William bloodied in the snow, Angel ran to him, her baby bundled against her chest. She knelt beside his crumpled form, tears freezing on her cheeks. "William," she choked out, touching his face with trembling fingers. Blood matted his beard, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. The barn collapsed with a thunderous crash, sending sparks spiraling into the star-filled sky. Too late, neighbors arrived with buckets and shovels. They formed a line, passing water from the well, but the barn was already beyond saving. "Dear God," Mrs. Peterson whispered, hurrying to Angel's side. "We need to get him inside." Two farmers helped carry William to the cabin, laying him carefully on his bed. Angel worked by lamplight, cleaning his wounds with gentle hands. Each wince and muffled groan tore at her heart. His face was barely recognizable through the bruising, a tease, but his eyes held no hatred when they met hers. "Not your fault," he managed to whisper, but Angel knew it was. Her father's words at the church came back to haunt her. She ruined any man fool enough to shelter her. She looked down at her sleeping son, then back at William's battered face. This good man had shown her nothing but kindness, had given her and her child a home when others showed only contempt. Now he lay beaten because of that. Mercy towed through the window. She watched the barn's remains smolder against the lightning sky. Dawn painted the snow in shades of pink and gold, a beautiful morning that seemed to mock their loss. The horses and cow huddled in the lee of the cabin, steam rising from their backs. Angel's hands clenched into fists. She was tired of running, tired of shame. William had stood up for her when no one else would. Now it was her turn to show the same courage. She straightened her shoulders, gently tucking the blanket around William's still form. Whatever came next, she would face it standing tall. These men, McGraw, her father, all of them thought they could rule through fear and violence. But they hadn't counted on the strength that could grow from kindness, or the fierce determination of a mother protecting her new family. The baby stirred against her chest. An angel held him closer. As the sun rose over the smoking ruins, she made a silent vow. She would fight for this place, for William, for her child. Not with fists or fire, but with the same quiet courage William had shown her. They would rebuild what was lost, and she would make sure the town knew the truth about who really brought shame to their opponent. The morning after the fire, Angel tended to William's wounds as pale sunlight filtered through the cabin windows. His face bore the marks of McGraw's cruelty, purple bruises darkening his usually gentle features. Each time he moved, pain flickered across his expression. Though he tried to hide it. "You need to rest," Angel said, placing a cool cloth on his forehead. "The fever's not broken yet." William's swollen fingers caught her wrist. "The work," he began. But she shook her head firmly. "I've already fed the animals and checked the fence line." Angel straightened her shoulders. "Now there's something else I need to do." She wrapped her baby boy carefully in layers of wool blankets, protecting him from the bitter morning cold. The child cooed softly as she tucked him close to her chest in a sling William had, fashioned from sturdy cloth. "Where are you going?" William asked, his voice hoarse from smoke. "To town." Angel's hands trembled slightly as she pulled on her coat, but her voice remained steady. It's time they heard the truth. William tried to sit up, wincing. "Angel, please." Those men need to face what they've done," she said. "Not just to you, but to everything you stand for." The walk into town felt longer than usual. Each crunch of her boots in the snow, marking another step toward confrontation. Her baby's warm weight against her chest gave her courage. This child, born in William's home under Naomi's care, represented everything good that had come from William's mercy. As Angel entered the town square, neighbors stopped to stare. Some whispered behind raised hands, while others turned away completely. She saw McGraw standing with his cronies near the saloon, their smug expressions telling her they expected her to slink past in shame. Instead, Angel walked directly to the church steps. Her heart pounded so hard she feared others might hear it. But she forced herself to climb those wooden stairs until she stood at the top. People gathered, drawn by the spectacle of the fallen woman who dared to claim such holy ground. "I know what you all think of me," Angel began, her voice shaking at first, but growing stronger. "The disgrace, the burden, the girl who brought shame to her family." More townspeople drifted closer, including Mrs. Peterson from the general store and the blacksmith's wife. Angel saw her father push through the crowd, his face darkening with familiar rage. "But I want to tell you about a different kind of man," Angel continued. Meeting the eyes of those below, a man who saw someone suffering and chose mercy over judgment, who offered shelter without demanding anything in return. She shifted her son gently in his sling, and his small movements seemed to draw every eye. "William Hochstetler took me in when my own father cast me out. He gave me a clean bed, honest work, and respect I hadn't known in months." Respect. Her father spat. "He bought you like cattle. He bought you like cattle." "He bought my freedom," Angel shot back, her voice ringing across the square. "While you tried to sell your own daughter's dignity, he protected it. While you cursed me, he prayed for me. While you saw only shame, he saw a child of God worthy of kindness." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Angel saw uncertainty replace scorn on some faces. Last night, men came to William's farm. They burned his barn and beat him nearly senseless. Her words carried clearly in the winter air. "They did this because he dared to show Christian charity to someone you all had condemned. They did this because he wouldn't bow to greed or cruelty." McGraw stepped forward, sneering. "The Amish don't belong here. This is cattle country. This is American soil. Angel countered, where every person has the right to worship and live in peace. William works his land honestly, treats his neighbors fairly, and lives his faith quietly. What man among you can claim better? Her father stormed forward, pointing an accusing finger. You defend this stranger over your own blood. I defend what's right, Angel said, her voice never wavering. Something you forgot how to do, father. She watched him turn away, shoulders rigid with anger, pushing through the crowd rather than hear more truth. Something inside her chest both broke and strengthened at the sight. I stand here today, Angel continued, cradling her son, because someone taught me that true strength isn't in causing pain, but in healing it. That real honor isn't in reputation, but in doing what's right when no one's watching. That's what William Hochstetler has shown me, and shown this town if you have eyes to see it. Mrs. Peterson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The blacksmith's wife nodded slowly. Even some of the men who had laughed at William's beating now looked at their boots, shame creeping into their expressions. Think on that, Angel finished quietly. Next time you decide who belongs here and who doesn't, think on it when you choose between mercy and cruelty. Because I promise you, God is watching those choices, even when you think no one else is. The morning after Angel's speech, hoofbeats echoed through the frozen valley. William and Angel looked up from their breakfast to see Naomi approaching on her sturdy paint horse, her dark braids gleaming against her wool shawl. The Ute midwife dismounted with fluid grace, carrying a leather satchel close to her body. I heard about the trouble, Naomi said, her voice clear and strong. The beating, her eyes took in William's bruised face and Angel's worried expression. I also heard how you stood up to them, young mother. Angel flushed, but Naomi's approving nod gave her strength. The midwives settled at their table, accepting a cup of coffee from William's trembling hands. I came because I remembered something, Naomi continued, opening her satchel. Something from 5 years ago, when I worked as translator for the county clerk. William leaned forward, wincing at the movement. What did you remember? Naomi drew out several folded papers, carefully preserved between pieces of oilcloth. I was there the day you purchased this land, William Hochstetler. I witnessed the signing. In those days, they needed someone who could speak both English and Ute. Because of the territorial treaties, Angel's breath caught as Naomi smoothed the documents on the table. There, in careful script, were land deeds and water rights, complete with official seals and multiple signatures. You were the witness. William asked softly. Naomi nodded. They did not expect an Indian woman to understand such things. But I read English as well as any clerk. These papers are proper and true. Your rights to this land and water are solid as stone. Angel touched the documents reverently. But will they listen to? She stopped, embarrassed, to an Indian. Naomi's smile held no bitterness. The law must listen. These bear the county seal. Even McGraw cannot deny what is written here. Within an hour, they rode into town together, William and Angel in their wagon, Naomi on her paint horse. The sight of them approaching drew crowds to the street. McGraw and his men emerged from the saloon, their faces darkening at the unusual procession done inside the town hall. The morning light streamed through dusty windows as Naomi stepped forward. She moved with quiet dignity, placing the documents before Judge Harrison. The room fell silent, save for the rustle of paper as he examined them. McGraw shouldered his way to the front. What's this nonsense? These are legal documents, Judge Harrison said slowly, recording the purchase of the Hochstetler homestead and accompanying water rights. Dated 5 years ago, properly witnessed and sealed. Witnessed by her. McGraw jabbed a finger toward Naomi. You can't tell me an Indian's word holds up and I can read them to you in 3 languages, Naomi interrupted calmly. English, Ute, and German. I served as official translator for 2 years. My name is recorded in the county books." The judge nodded. "I remember. You helped prevent blood being shed over the Miller Creek dispute." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Angel saw faces change as people realized this Native woman commanded more respect than they had imagined. Even some of McGraw's allies shifted uncomfortably. "The deeds are legitimate," Judge Harrison declared. "The water rights are clear. Mr. Hochstetler's claim stands firm under law." McGraw's face reddened. "This is cattle country. You can't let some plain-dressed farmer. The law speaks louder than your wishes, Mr. McGrath." The judge cut in. "Unless you want to explain to the territorial governor why you're defying legal documents." Angel watched hope dawn on William's bruised face as McGrath and his men stormed out. Around them, the mood of the townsfolk shifted like spring ice breaking up. Mrs. Peterson stepped forward to squeeze William's hand. The blacksmith offered to help rebuild the barn. Others who had stood silent now spoke words of neighborly support. Through it all, Naomi remained serene, gathering her precious documents. Angel touched her arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything, the birth, and now this. Life finds a way to balance," Naomi replied. "Like water flowing over stones, truth will eventually make its path clear." As they left the town hall, Angel saw respect in the eyes that met hers, not just for William's legal victory, but for the dignity with which they had faced persecution. The winter sun seemed warmer somehow, promising spring's return and new beginnings. The setting sun painted the cabin walls in warm amber light as William eased himself into his wooden rocking chair. His bruises had faded from angry purple to mottled yellow, but the pain still caught in his breath when he moved too quickly. Angel watched him from the kitchen table, where she was wrapping fresh bread in clean cloth. McGrath and his men had been notably absent from town these past days. Their defeat in the town hall had stripped away their swagger, leaving them to nurse their wounded pride in silence. The cattle baron's retreat felt like the lifting of a storm cloud that had hung over the homestead since winter's start. "Mrs. Peterson brought another stew by today," Angel said, smoothing the cloth with careful hands. "Said she was sorry she hadn't spoken up sooner about everything." William nodded, a gentle smile touching his beard. "Folks are finding their courage now. Brother Schmidt offered to help raise a new barn come spring. Even Mr. Turner at the Mercantile," Angel added. "He apologized for how he treated us that day. Said he should have known better, having seen your honest dealings these past years." The baby stirred in his cradle. A beautiful piece William had carved during the long winter evenings. Angel went to him, tucking the blanket around his tiny form. The cradle's runners were worn smooth from William's careful sanding, ensuring no splinter would ever catch small fingers. "I never thanked you proper," William said softly, "for speaking up when I couldn't, for facing them all down while I was laid up with these bruises." Angel's throat tightened at the memory of William after the beating. His quiet strength tested but unbroken. "You gave me shelter when my own father cast me out. How could I do less?" Still, William's voice was warm with admiration. "Takes rare courage to stand before a hostile crowd, especially carrying such hurts as you do." Angel settled into the chair beside him, drawn by the firelight and the gentle creak of his rocker. The baby's soft breathing merged with the pop and snap of burning wood, creating a peaceful melody she'd never thought to find again. "Tell me about your home," she said suddenly. "Your life before. You've never spoken much of it." William's eyes grew distant with memory, but his smile deepened. "Was raised near Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Good farmland, rolling hills. Our community was close-knit, dozens of families working together, sharing joys and burdens." What was it like growing up Amish? A quiet chuckle escaped him. "Oh, we had our share of mischief, make no mistake. I remember one summer evening, my brothers and I snuck into old Jacob Yoder's orchard. His apples were the sweetest in the county. Angel found herself smiling at the image of a young William, perhaps less somber than the man before her. Did you get caught? Indeed we did. William's shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. Jacob was waiting behind his barn. Made us spend the next day helping him harvest those very same apples and wouldn't let us take a single bite. His laugh broke free then, rich and unexpected. Angel joined in, surprised by how natural it felt. The sound filled the cabin like sunshine after rain, startling the baby into a brief whimper before he settled again. Those were good days, William said softly. Simple, hard work, yes, but shared among many hands. Singing in the meeting house on Sundays. Barn raisings where the whole community came together. You must miss it terribly. William was quiet for a moment, watching the flames dance. I do, but God has his purposes. Sometimes he leads us down unexpected paths to find new blessings. His eyes met hers, full of warmth and something deeper that made Angel's heart skip. She looked down at her hands, suddenly shy. I never thought I'd find peace again. After everything, the Lord provides, William said gently. Not always in ways we expect. Sometimes through trials we'd never choose. But he provides. The fire crackled softly as they sat in comfortable silence. Outside, an owl called into the gathering dusk. Angel felt the last knot of tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Here, in this simple cabin with its handmade furniture and well-swept floors, she had found more than just shelter. She had found belonging. William began humming an old hymn, his voice carrying the tune his mother had taught him decades ago in that distant Pennsylvania farmhouse. Angel closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. The baby slept peacefully in his cradle, and the shadows held no threats. For the first time since her world had shattered, Angel felt truly at home. The first warm breeze of spring swept through the valley, carrying the scent of melting snow and awakening earth. Tiny green shoots pushed through the dark soil in William's garden, and the afternoon sun lingered longer each day. Inside the cabin, Angel watched William rock their son, his weathered hands gentle against the baby's back. Angel, William said softly, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note that made her pause in her mending. I have something to ask thee. She set aside her work, heart quickening at his serious tone. William carefully laid the sleeping child in his cradle before crossing to kneel beside her. Chair, these past months, he began, you have brought light back to this home, not just by keeping house or sharing work, but by showing such strength and grace in the face of trials. He took her hand in his calloused palm, warm against her skin. I would ask if you would marry me not from need or obligation, but because I have grown to love thee. Tears welled in Angel's eyes as she looked at this gentle man who had rescued her from shame and shown her what true kindness meant. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, I will marry you. Word spread quickly through the town, and to Angel's surprise, the response was warm. The same neighbors who had once whispered cruel words now brought wedding gifts, fresh-baked pies, hand-sewn linens, even a fine wool shawl for the ceremony. On their wedding day, the one-room church glowed with lamplight. Naomi arrived early, her dignity silencing any lingering prejudice as she took her place among the witnesses. She wore her finest dress and carried herself with quiet pride, nodding approval as Angel walked down the short aisle. William stood waiting, dressed in his simple black coat, but with joy brightening his face. Their baby boy, now growing sturdy and strong, watched from Mrs. Peterson's arms as his parents joined hands before the minister. The absence of Angel's father hung in the air, but his bitterness no longer had power to wound her. She had found her true family here in William's steadfast love, in their child's innocent trust. in the community that had learned to see past judgment to truth, as they exchanged their vows. Hymns rose from the gathered congregation. The familiar melodies filled the little church, carrying with them acceptance and hope. Angel felt the last weight of shame fall away as William slipped a plain gold band onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly with emotion. "What God has joined together," the minister proclaimed, "let no man put asunder." Angel looked up into William's eyes, seeing there all the promise of their shared future. She belonged here, truly and completely. At last, the morning sun warmed the new-laid planks as neighbors hammered and sawed, rebuilding the barn that hatred had burned. William directed the work with quiet authority, while Angel stood near, their plump baby boy cooing in her arms. The child's eyes followed his father's movements, tiny hands reaching toward the bustling activity. Fresh spring grass rippled across the meadow like waves of green silk. Along the river bottom, water sparkled in the morning light, promising life for their crops. The sound of friendly chatter and wood being worked filled the air so different from the jeers and cruel whispers that had once haunted Angel's. Days dot, standing in the shade of a young maple. Angel looked out over their land. Her mind drifted back to that bitter winter morning in the town square, when shame and her father's rage had threatened to destroy her. Now, here she stood, surrounded by the same neighbors who had once judged her. Watching them raise barn beams alongside her husband, William stepped away from the work, crossing the yard to join her. His hand found hers, warm and steady. Angel's heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "both to William and to God above, for showing me what mercy truly means." Together, they stood before their land husband. Wife and child, a family built on faith and forgiveness, stronger than any storm that had tried to break them. Thanks for watching. Stories like this shape us in ways we don't always expect. If something resonated, subscribe. I'm back tomorrow with another one worth hearing.